Good morning. Is everyone hearing? Good morning to all.
Morning.
And let me, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, warmly welcome our officials from the Ministry of Finance and the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Senator Wade Mark, and I'm the chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. The Committee on Public Accounts Enterprises has a mandate to consider and report to the House on the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of all enterprises that are owned or controlled by or on behalf of the state. The Auditor General's report on any such accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements, and whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of this examination is for the committee to follow up on the implementation of the recommendations made in the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee's 24th report during the 11th Parliament on an examination into the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial years 2012 and 2017. Also to ascertain whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. To determine also the challenges being faced and possible solutions to these challenges, and also to make further recommendations to ensure that the policy of the Exim Bank is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically. This meeting is being broadcast, or will be broadcast, I should say, at a later date on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, PAL View. Participants are advised that their microphones should remain muted until recognized by the chair. May I at this time invite other members of the Public Accounts Committee to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Amrita Devanarayan, member.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Happy to have you. Laura Lizamali Singh, member.
Good morning, everyone. Renuka Sagram Singh Sukla, member.
May I at this time invite the officials?
Good morning, my lord. Good morning, Chairman. Sorry, Keith Scotland, member.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that, Mr. Scotland.
That's all right, Chairman. I
Yes.
have elevated you in a
Yeah.
court matter. So.
Thank you. Thank you. And may I now invite officials from the Ministry of Finance to introduce themselves, to be followed by the Export-Import Bank officials.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Jennifer Lachman, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Yes. Officials from the Export-Import Bank.
Good morning, Chairman. My name is John Tanyan. I'm the Chairman of the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago Limited.
Other members?
Good morning. My name is Navin Dukran. I'm the CEO of the Exim Bank.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. I am Carol Austin, Chief Financial Officer of Exim Bank.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there any other officials? Okay. May I, at this time, invite the Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, to make a brief opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I make my opening statement, I would just like to say that with me, we're having some difficulties. Ms. Mala Mohammed and Mr. Ryan Maharaj is with us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Chairman. The Minister of Finance Corporation Seoul is charged with the responsibility for the state's portfolio of investments, which includes Exim Bank. Monitoring of the portfolio is done through the Investments Division, Ministry of Finance. For the period under the review of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee today, which is 2012 to 2017, the Ministry of Finance Investment Division performed a monitoring role similar to that of other state-owned enterprises. And the line ministry at that time was Ministry of Trade. With effect from October 2017, the Ministry of Finance became the line ministry of Exim Bank. The ministry continues to assist the company in fulfilling its mandate of facilitating the growth and expansion of the non-energy export and manufacturing sectors. Additionally, in his budget presentation for fiscal 2021, the Minister of Finance indicated that the company will be restructured to provide project financing for Caribbean energy sector projects by Trinidad and Tobago companies. More recently, government has approved a capital restructure for Exim Bank. We look forward to providing any information to assist this committee in its deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Lachman. Can I invite the Chief Executive Officer of the Exim Bank to make a brief opening statement at this time?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. If I may, Chairman, with your permission, defer the opening statement to my chairman, Mr. John Tanyang, and I would be more than happy to contribute thereafter as you see fit. Is that okay?
No problem. I'll invite Mr. Tanyang to now address us briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, honorable members of the PAC, and officials of the Ministry of Finance. The opportunity to illustrate the operations of Exim Bank remains paramount to our philosophy of transparency and accountability.
Mr. Tanyang, we are getting a feedback. I don't know if there's a cell nearby that might be infringing on the quality of our communication, but we are getting a slight feedback while you are speaking.
Okay, I don't have my cell around me, and I am not sure what is causing it, Mr. Chairman. Is it coming from my side? Has it been established?
Yeah, it is coming from your side when you are speaking. We are getting a slight feedback out of your system. We'll certainly invite our technicians to look into it, but until that is done, we will be experiencing some slight feedback which would impact on the quality of the communication.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Well, can I ask the CEO? He has my my opening comments. Perhaps he could deliver it on my behalf, and I will just mute until.
Okay, Mr. Tanyang, we have been advised that it is coming from your end. Nevertheless, we have been advised by our technical team it is workable, so you can proceed.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The opportunity to illustrate I will just continue. The opportunity to illustrate the operations of Exim Bank remains paramount to our philosophy of transparency and accountability. As the country's official export credit agency, the Exim Bank has remained steadfast in its commitment to non-energy export expansion and bolstered the domestic supply of essential items to our Forex facilities for manufacturers and import distributors of essential items. The bank's position was solidified in 2018 when the Ministry of Finance appropriately assessed the need to prioritize Forex to manufacturing firms. And to date, we have allocated US $100 million to over 100 manufacturers across multiple sectors. In 2020, the institution's financial structure became an essential component in alleviating the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, having preserved adequate supplies of consumer-sensitive products and mitigating the risk of supply chain disruptions across the domestic value chain. By year-end 2020, the bank would have appropriately disbursed for the importation and distribution of essential items US $150 million. Engendering confidence within the business community remained paramount, and we continued our collaborative approach with key business support organizations, ensuring a structured delivery process. This has yielded tremendous support and has enabled the business community to focus on export growth strategies with confidence, improve and repair supplier credit relationships, reduce manufacturing downtime with enhanced inventory levels, provide support to maintain domestic employment, and ensure supply stability of domestic goods. The Exim Bank will continue to develop its internal infrastructure and provide intuitive private sector support to enable capital investment to improve production capacity and the expansion of key industrial assets. This, we believe, is necessary to improve their ability to compete internationally and respond to global recovery opportunities. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tanyang, for your statement. May I, at this time, before I begin my own areas of clarification, invite Mr. Keith Scotland to address any areas of clarification, as well as to raise any questions to the parties that are before us, that is the officials from both the Exim Bank and the Ministry of Finance, pertinent to our inquiry. So, Mr. Scotland, I will now invite you to pursue any areas that you like at this time to clarify, or, as I said, to raise questions pertinent to our proceedings.
Much obliged, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of Exim Bank. From March 2020, there was and there is now the onset of what has been declared as the global pandemic, COVID-19. Could you tell this committee what steps has the bank taken to mitigate the adverse effects of this pandemic as it relates to the bank's operations and business?
Mr. Tanyang or Mr. Navin? Okay.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, kind member, for that that very good question. When the pandemic began, the government of Trinidad came out with the COVID-19 economic response, which covered a number of different areas. And the area that the Exim Bank was responsible for delivering was ensuring the successful delivery of foreign exchange to international suppliers for the provision of essential items into the country. At the time, the global supply chains, and even up to today, global supply chains have been stressed, and there's increased supply chain risk. And it was assessed by the government that the provision of food, medicines, PPE, cleaning supplies, and other essential items, we needed to make sure to be able to get those into the country in the appropriate amount of time. At the time also, international suppliers were only really sending if you could pay cash. They were not really extending credit terms, so you had to pay cash. So the government initially provided a Forex window for essential supplies to the tune of US $75 million to meet the suppliers for those essential items. That was for a 3-month window at the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm very happy to say we were able, in very short order, within a few weeks, to be able to set up a program that covers all the food distributors of the country, in terms of all the members of the Food Distributors Association, the vast majority, over to 80 to 90% of the pharmaceutical importers of the country, and be able to engage with them to be able to provide foreign exchange for their purchases. On that program, and then that program was then started again, coming towards the end of the year, in October to the end of the year, December, totaling over about 150 million US dollars for those companies. On those, the total companies participating in that program was 69 companies, which represented companies from the food and beverage, medical and pharmaceuticals, PPE, and cleaning supplies companies. Food and beverage companies received $106 million out of the 150. Medical and pharmaceutical, 30.4 million. PPE, 12.3 million. Cleaning supplies, 1 million. And non-food items, which are things like light bulbs and batteries and other items like that, received about 440,000. We were very pleased to have the collaboration of many government and public sector and private sector parties to be able to deliver those programs on time, on target, and on budget.
It brings me, Chair, it doesn't answer. So I understand that what you have told me is maybe a response. What I wanted to know then, and maybe you can submit that in writing to us, is what policies did the bank have in place, a strategic plan to deal with the pandemic, to ensure the efficiency of the bank? Maybe, and you can put that in writing. But this leads me to my next question. And Member Perry, Chair, you remember Member Perry had raised that as an issue. Tell us, because you've said certain sectors received foreign exchange, but we cannot bury our head in the sand. There is a complaint from local entrepreneurs and businesses about the lack of availability of foreign exchange. One, can you tell me if the bank is aware of that? And two, what is the bank doing? If the bank is aware there is such a problem, what is the Exim Bank doing in order to alleviate that situation as it relates to local manufacturers and local importers of foreign goods who require foreign exchange?
Mr. Dukaran?
Thank you very much. Yes, well, the response in terms of prior to the pandemic, when you talk about in terms of our strategies and plans, we had what you call a business continuity plan that was in place, and we also then implemented that, and we were able to move to digital workflows. So at the time when a lot of people were in lockdown, our volumes went up by 300% because we started to deliver this foreign exchange to different sectors. Our ongoing business has been in manufacturing sector and exports, which we have other programs that we do on an ongoing basis. Those would include not only the provision of foreign exchange, but the offering of trade finance facilities and so on. And these are meant to be able to provide the manufacturers or the export earning companies to be able to have financial resources in order to increase exports and penetrate additional markets. The pandemic response, as you say, the importers of essential items, I will say prior to the pandemic, the bank did not deal with importers of essential items. So this was very new for us, and we were able to set it up. You mentioned about burying our head in the sand. Well, we are not doing that at all. In fact, we have been doing a lot of strategic visioning and actually planning ahead in order to be able to expand our service offerings. As the Deputy PS said, our mandate is being expanded in the budget and other things, and we are building out programs and services that will also be able to allow us to assist service companies in the future, as well as other export foreign exchange earning companies. So those are some of the methods. We do have a strategic plan that is in place that focuses on 3 pillars: sales, infrastructure, and people. And we have been making very good progress on executing on that. And that's, I will stop there and offer further clarification as you request.
Member Scotland.
Mr. Dukaran, yeah.
Member Scotland, if it's okay for me to jump in for just one quick bit.
Yes. Subject to the chair.
Chair, through you, can I jump in one bit? Now, Chairman, I'm not hearing.
Yes, can you proceed with your question?
Yes, Chair. It just comes out of the submission that was just made. Now, Exim Bank would have mentioned that they do have a business continuity plan in response to Member Scotland's question. I recall seeing that being mentioned in page 2 of their submissions. But the said plan, and of course, that plan, Exim Bank is saying to this committee that therein lie their response to COVID and the challenges that they would have faced with the pandemic, right? If we can respectfully request a copy of that said plan, because it's not annexed to the said submissions, but page 2 of their submissions, they made mention of this plan. But the actual plan itself, which I would certainly want to have an opportunity to look at, is not annexed. So if we could kindly probably have that presented to us, I will greatly appreciate it. And perhaps the plan can also, having not seen what the plan details, if probably in that plan, if they can also address measures that would have been implemented by Exim Bank to address or circumvent any losses they would have experienced or challenges they may have faced during the pandemic period. So that's all relative to that particular point on the plan.
Thank you so very much.
Chairman, if I may add,
yes.
Exim Bank's response during the COVID alongside the Forex initiative, we also had a dual system working whereby we have US 100 million approved by the cabinet to roll out to the manufacturers. So in addition to allowing for sustainability, in the country as far as food and pharmaceuticals and essentials are concerned, we also had another Forex program running whereby we provided US dollars to all the manufacturers. In addition, similar to the commercial banks, we had a moratorium for our customers. Not all took it up because some were able to meet their loan commitments, but we did have a moratorium in effect for repayment of loans.
Okay.
Thank you so very much. Mrs. Scotland?
Yes, Chairman, I would want to direct this question to the Ministry of Finance Investment Divisions. Investment and Ministry of Finance, you will tell me if you agree with my first statement, because if you don't, then the question that follows will make no sense. But do you agree with me and the committee that investment now as a division of the Ministry of Finance will be most critical in going forward in light of the effect of the global pandemic on our economic position?
Mrs. Lachman?
Chairman, through you. Yes, Chairman, through you. The role of the Investments Division is to support Corporation Sole, Minister of Finance, in the monitoring aspect of state enterprises, which we do. We take our responsibility seriously, and I agree that Ministry of Finance as a whole, has a critical role and responsibility, not just during this pandemic and going forward, but has always had a critical role to play. So I don't know what the other question would have been.
Well, the first was to get your agreement, and now I go because I know that the Corporation's Sole does not sleep. I know that Corporation Sole works 25/7. What has the division done to attract outside capital, outside input in the context of a drying up of our national pool? That is my question to you.
I humbly submit that the role of the investment division doesn't fall within that remit. There are agencies within the government. You have Ministry of Trade, other state enterprises, for example, Export TT, and others that have specific roles to play. But to say that the investment division has that specific role, I don't think so.
Do you not agree that maybe this is a time I don't want to get a sense of defensiveness. Do not be defensive. We are interrogating, all right? Do you not agree that this may be an appropriate time when the investment division of the Ministry of Finance takes a more active role in that aspect of our national existence?
Well, I would like to say that the investment division is constantly evolving. And even recently, we looked at roles and responsibilities as recent as last month, but from the beginning of the year. So certainly we would consider what you have proposed.
Chairman, and when you do consider it, can you revert to us, please? Yes?
Sure.
Chairman, respectfully, I think that I have asked the interrogatories that I had. I do not think that I did the question from Member Perry as it relates to the Exim Bank's availability to recoup foreign exchange. I did not understand it fully, so I do not pretend to ask that, but I think I did ask the first aspect of his inquiry, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you so very much. May I now invite, thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Tanya?
Can I just interject into Member Scotland's
yes.
inquiry? Perhaps I could add some context so far as I think what he's getting at. Insofar as the recoup, I heard the word recoup of foreign exchange. I gather that what he's driving at is what are we doing to for companies to gain or foreign exchange. In other words, because we are basically country as a vast consumer of foreign exchange, but insofar as the earning of foreign exchange, we are not a net earner of foreign exchange as far as the businesses are concerned. So one of the Exim Bank's role is to assist these manufacturers in order to gain foreign exchange so that eventually they will become a net earner of foreign exchange. There are very few companies in Trinidad and Tobago, manufacturers that actually are considered net earners of foreign exchange. We are essentially a consumer of foreign exchange. So so insofar as the foreign exchange is concerned, that's one of the directions that the Exim Bank is doing, that we are assisting all these manufacturers, working closely with them so that they will get to the point where they will become net earners of foreign exchange. I think that's one objective of the Exim Bank in its role and in what we are doing. I think the second part of the question, I believe Member Scotland is trying to get at, is that what are we doing, and vis-a-vis the investment division of the Ministry of Finance. I believe that as an entity that is operating on with its own board, I think it is the responsibility of the board to make those sort of recommendations in determining the kind of capital we require and the kind of investment that the entity is required in order to, present its operations. So in this way, I think what Exim Bank has been doing, and we have developed this strategic plan, and but that's a strong word, but we recommended to the investment division, through the investment division of the Ministry of Finance. We needed to recapitalize the bank if we had to do this and what have you. So I must say that the recommendation came from the Exim Bank to the investment division, to the Minister of Finance. And I think from where we sit at Exim Bank, I would say that they have been very receptive to the recommendations and they work closely with us. And hence the reason why I believe we recently got a recapitalization. And that is one pillar that we were able to complete in order to achieve the other objectives that we have had in our strategic plan. So I don't know, Member Scotland, I don't know if that sort of in a way answers what you're trying to do.
It in a way answers it because the question really came from a Member Perry, and I did undertake to champion it. Chairman, through you, can I ask, and I want to be fair to both the Permanent Secretary and to the Exim Bank personnel, could we get from them then, Chairman, some document with the statistics as it relates to the demand, at least on their part, for foreign exchange, and what has transpired with that, with the actual operations for the period, let's say March 2020 to 2021. We can take that in writing acting chair.
Yeah.
It'll be unfair to ask them to do that now. Can I respectfully?
Yes,
May I
yes,
respectfully
certainly.
ask from you? Thank you,
Yes.
Chairman.
Certainly. We will. Before I invite Member Dionarine to join us, I want to thank Member Scotland for his questions and the responses we have had thus far from the officials. May I simply ask, may I welcome the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines?
Thank you. I wanted you to mark my presence, and I thank you very warmly, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. May I ask either Mr. Tangyang or Mr. Navin Dukaran, what has happened to the company's financial audited accounts for 2018, 2019, and 2020? Because we are yet to have those reports, financial audited accounts, refer to our committee. Can you advise this committee what is the status of these outstanding audited financial accounts?
Yes, Chairman, I would be more than pleased to articulate, and in collaboration with my Ministry of Finance colleagues. We have completed the audited financial accounts for those periods, and we have been working with the ministry in order to go through our AGM process in order to have that ratified by all parties and the shareholder and so on, and then publish the accounts. And I think we're making some good process. I would defer to our DPS Lachman on that as well.
Yeah, PS Lachman, could you advise further?
Thank you, Chairman. The Ministry of Finance is in receipt of the audited financial statements for financial years 2018-2019. As soon as approval is received from the Minister of Finance, the annual general meetings will be convened and the financial statements will be adopted then. Subsequent to that, the statements will be submitted.
Any ideas? So what is the time? First of all, how long have you had these financial audited accounts in your possession?
Chairman, I'll have to provide that in writing. I don't have that with me right now.
But can you use your good offices to have these matters speedily addressed so that those accounts can be had at the level of the Parliament and later on transmitted to our committee?
We will try our best, Chairman.
Yes, we hope your best is attempted here, because these are outstanding matters for 2018 and 2019. What is the status of the 2020 report? Audited accounts, may I ask?
Yes, we are just at the final stages of concluding that audit and having those that audit completed. And I would say that we are on track to mark what I would term a financial turnaround of the Exim Bank, which is in line with the recapitalization that the government has recently done, which restores our capital base, and also a return to profitability for the Exim Bank in 2020.
Okay. And before I invite Member Dionarine, may I ask of your strategic plan within the framework of what we are dealing with, and what is the current period that your plan would cover, and whether you can make a copy of that plan available for study by this committee? Mr. Navin?
Yes, Chairman. We'd be happy to share some information regarding that strategic plan. As you would have mentioned, as we mentioned at the budget last year around September, the government signaled that the Exim Bank, I'll just say the Exim Bank is being transformed to facilitate the growth and expansion of the non-energy sector, thereby enhancing our foreign exchange earnings and sustaining employment levels. And as well as including some increased mandate options in terms of the Caribbean energy sector projects. We have commenced, that instruction came in September, we have commenced a transformation exercise where we have now engaging partners to help us now craft an updated plan. The initial one was for 2020 to 23. But however, given the new mandate and the new environment that we are in, we are now working on that whole transformation initiative, which would allow us to increase our national impact and come with new programs and strategies to be able to. So we are really updating this over the course of this year, as instructed by the Ministry of Finance. Just to jump back one thing to the honorable member, Scotland, that had talked about what are we doing to get foreign exchange into the country. There's two ways you can do it. One is by foreign inflows from external parties, and one is from by increasing your own earning capacity in the private sector to earn more foreign exchange. So our standard business model and operations are geared to increasing the foreign exchange earnings of the private sector. However, we have gotten approval from the Ministry of Finance to engage in discussions with various multilateral agencies, which we had included in our submission to you, the IDB and the CAF, for exploratory conversations, to be able to source foreign inflows as well, so that we could deploy that capital productively and effectively in the private sector. In that regard, I will also say that the investments division has been collaborating with us as well on that front to be able to source some of that and engage and move these concepts forward to some level of reality. So there we are working on both fronts, and we are presently restructuring our strategy to be able to address the increased mandate that is being provided to us from the government of Trinidad. And we'd be happy to share strategic information as required and as requested in writing as you see fit.
Chair, we are not hearing you.
May I ask Mr. Navin Dukaran that given the initial strategic plan before the new mandate was given to the bank to assume new responsibilities, would you share with this committee whether that plan was approved by the Ministry of Finance?
The plan was submitted to our board in November of 2019, and it was approved by the board of the Exim Bank. Following that, a submission was made to the Ministry of Finance regarding that new strategic direction. Some of the things that include with it is regarding complementing the banking system and supporting the banking system in providing foreign exchange. We are one part of the mix to compare with everything, but that is one part. Another area would be new product development, and which we have actually been able to accomplish on a number of the Forex programs, as well as a product. I just give you an example, what we call an X loan, which is a loan with US dollar proceeds, but TT dollar repayment, so that companies could invest in capital equipment and improve their competitiveness and productivity. Also a shift to collateralized lending. I will stop there because I see a member has would like to think, so I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Okay. May I invite Member Ryan to join us at this time?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so far, Exim Bank and Ministry of Finance. Now, I have a couple follow-up questions before I get to my questions that I initially had. Now, I understand that you're saying that a capital restructuring was approved and you all are proceeding with this capital restructuring. What was your reason in the first place to request or to have a capital restructuring exercise done and approved?
Yes, well, what we did is over the last few years, primarily since this board has been in place, is to really review the financial statements and the risk profile and so on of the bank. And what was required was, as we moved to adopting the IFRS 9 standards, it was to increase our provision levels on legacy loans that were originated in many years, decade plus, and in the last decade and so on. Accordingly, with increase in provision levels, there was an impact, a negative impact on our capital levels. And accordingly, it became required for us to now achieve further and future mandates that we would need to recapitalize and reestablish a tier 1 capital base in order to meet all regulatory requirements. And that was the primary reason for that capital restructuring.
So then could you tell me, as a result of this capital restructuring that took place, how does the blend of equity and debt changes with this new capital restructuring that was approved?
Sure. So
tell me what it was before and what it is now.
I can tell you exactly. In fact, that is one of our key performance indicators that was included in our strategic plan, alongside things like employment, total export sales to our customers and so on, but it was our debt to equity ratio. And prior to this restructuring, the debt equity ratio was approximately, well, it was 4.02. And the lower that number is, the better and the more healthy the company is. Subsequent to that restructuring, we had a target of 1.5 to 2 was our target range for our debt to equity ratio. And that has since improved to 1.43. So we've actually overshot the target range a little bit. And now that is what sets us up to go forward. So that is with respect to the debt to equity ratio. We've also made improvements on the interest rate spread, which is another KPI that we are tracking.
Okay, so could you tell me who assisted with the capital restructuring exercise, which entity or?
Yeah, this was accomplished primarily by the Exim Bank and the management of the Exim Bank, as well as in consultation with the central bank and the regulators in terms of setting what are the requirements and so on. And then a lot of the heavy lifting was done by our colleagues at the investments division at the Ministry of Finance in order to move it through the system and successfully get that approval. That approval came just a couple of weeks ago by the cabinet.
Okay, all right. So let me move on to the special Forex window. I have some follow-up questions with them, but on that issue. But I just want to confirm one thing. Now, during the earlier conversations with member Scotland, it was indicated that 150 million, was allocated to 69 companies. And also parallel to that, we had $100 million going to 100 manufacturers. Is that correct? I'm not hearing you.
Yes, that is exactly correct.
Okay, so tell me something. Before I ask anything else, where did this US come from? It's 250 million US.
Yeah, that is by way of allocations. We would apply the allocations have been approved by the cabinet. And then the process is that we apply to the Ministry of Finance. As we sell these funds into the market, we then will go and request from the Ministry of Finance, who will then liaise with the central bank. And over and above the central bank's ongoing capital and foreign exchange injections into the banking system, which is approximately about 100 million per month. This is a special allocation that is then made to direct into the private sector, into the productive growth sector.
Okay, so that is interesting. Does this affect your profitability in any way?
Yes, it has had a, this is why we have been able to have a contrarian experience over the course of 2020 compared to many companies. Because of the increase in foreign exchange operations, we have been able to make some funds to cover our operation regarding service fees on the foreign exchange sales and handling fees and so on. So it has positively impact our profitability and financial sustainability.
Okay, so tell me something. These 69 companies that benefited from the US 150 million. What was the criteria used to allocate this money, apart from it they being categorized as a essential, providing an essential service, good or service to the country? What were the other aspects that were considered to allocate these monies or to take these 69 companies into consideration?
Yes, so those the primary on that program, the Essentials program, the primary eligibility criteria is that you are importing an item that is an essential item that is on our approved, government approved list. That list was created, basically it started from the zero rated VAT items, basic foods and that type of stuff, and then it was expanded to include different medicines and so on. That is really the main criteria. You have to be a company that is providing, importing those items. That is the first requirement. Secondly, we had looked at that every company that we will deal with has to have some level of distribution into the market, distribution to reach the public. So for example, what I would say is that we won't deal with like one supermarket, that a person has one supermarket. We deal with, if they have a group that say, there's supermarkets that deal with the southeastern area of the country, there's in the eastern area, there's the food distributors that have national distribution, then they would qualify as well. The other, I guess, key requirement is that we do ask for a number of different compliance information regarding annual returns, financial statements, and so on for the last 3 years. This is to ensure that we don't have we want established businesses rather than just any, people would just say have an idea that they want to do something. It has to be for proven companies that have been able to do this. And I will say that we did get great support from the Ministry of Trade as well when this program was developed, in providing data on historical import data, so that when we were making allocations to the companies, we were able to line it up with historical import levels for the companies. That way, we didn't over allocate to one or under allocate to one. We were able to have a fair way of allocating. So it's really for those companies have been who bringing in essential items in the country.
Okay, so I mean, I know you have a certain level of confidentiality to maintain when it comes to speaking about the clients, but at an aggregate level, could you let the committee know what percentage of the beneficiaries of this special Forex window fell into the small and medium enterprises category?
Yes, I can get that in 1 second here. So on that, okay. Now we do have for the manufacturing, on the manufacturing side of the Forex program. I'll just start with that with the 102 company. We have 102 companies on there. I would say there's 72% of the companies that fell into the small category, 14% into the medium, 14% into the large. On the essential items, we do have the segments, but I don't have that information readily available. We have the small companies, 10 to 49 employees, medium 50 to 249, and large entities 250. Sorry, not looking at yeah, we have the same segmentation, but I don't have the breakdown of that 69 readily available, but we're more than happy to share that.
Yeah, kindly submit it to us in writing, please. So then the 72% of manufacturers who were considered small and beneficiaries, they had no problems or challenges satisfying that criteria of providing 3 years of financial returns and other supporting financial documents. Is that correct?
Correct. It is a requirement for us to onboard you onto the programs. And so therefore they had to meet those requirements.
Okay. Now, during the conversation, I heard mention was made by, I believe it's Miss Austin, that there was a moratorium offered for persons who you all were dealing with before the pandemic, that is providing assistance to exporters, right? Could you provide us, this committee, with the details of that moratorium?
Sure, we can. Carol, would you like to respond, or I can do it?
No, I don't have that information at hand. If you do, can you proceed?
Sure. Well, on the moratorium, what we did was we had initially set a 3-month moratorium for our lending clients, where they would they will not be required to make principal payments on their loans. However, they were still required to make interest payments. We then further extended that for at least 6 months. Mm-hmm. And so the total moratorium ended to be 6 months of principal moratorium in order to support the companies. This was, done throughout the banking sector, and we ensured that our clients were able to participate in that type of program as well.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to ask one more question before I pause.
Yes.
So, thank you, Chair. So now the mandate of Exim Bank is for primarily export promotion and to provide Forex earnings in the non-energy sector, and also to generate a certain level of employment. That is what I read the primary mandate of Exim Bank is. Now, prior to COVID-19, you all indicated that you all dealt primarily with exporters. Are you in a position to say from 2012 onwards, because that is the period, at 2012 to 2017 at least, because that is the period we are reviewing, tell us in numbers what percentage of foreign exchange you all were able to generate by providing services to exporters, what level of employment you all were able to generate. Are those statistics that you all look at in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance?
We do look at it now. During the period 2012 to 2017, I don't know if back then we had some of that information, but what you're alluding to is another KPI. So I think you're zoning in on a lot of our key performance indicators that we are tracking. And one of the KPIs is what we call total export sales for our customers.
Right.
And I'm very happy to, I don't have the information because we didn't have the setup with the Ministry of Trade to be able to provide this aggregate data in terms of export levels for our clients then. But we do now. And what I would say is that when that same strategic plan was approved by our board, right? At the time, if you totaled up all the export sales for all of our clients, it was about 600 million TT dollars in November 2019. We then set a key performance indicator of achieving at least 1 billion in total export sales for our customers. Mm-hmm. By November 2020, I'm pleased to say that that number, as evidence from the Ministry of Trade data, went over the 1 billion, and we supported TT $1.37 billion in total export sales for our clients, right? Now, as of February, and now this has grown now from 600 to 1.37, it has subsequently grown now to 1.68 billion. of February. Now, I want to be cautioned that this is not because export sales are growing in general, because in 2020 export sales to the market has gone down. This is because the Exim Banks, I'm speaking specifically the Exim Banks client base, and our client base, this is onboarding those 100 and plus manufacturers and exporters. And so this is for our client base. Our client base has been expanding. And so now it stands at we are supporting export sales of 1.68 billion TT dollars.
Okay, so given that favorable response from the export side and the clients from your export side, and also given that you all have so much intervention in the import market that probably would continue for some time, could you give us a ratio in terms of what percentage of your clientele deals with exports and what percentage deals with imports?
We can definitely provide you with that because we do have the data. We just put it in the format that you would like.
Okay, I would pause now. I see Member Hines is trying to get the chair's attention for some time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, good morning.
Do I get your eye?
I say good morning, and you can now present your question.
Thank you very, very much. For a moment, I feared that I would never catch your eye, Mr. Chairman. But I'm very happy that
you have caught my eye, so you can proceed.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. That you did not look after my catching it. You did not look askance. But I'm very happy to have been recognized by you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me begin. I have listened to the very wonderful interrogation, and properly so, because this is the work of this Joint Select Committee, this parliamentary committee. I really enjoyed Member Dionarine's inquisition on these issues. And as I listened to her, and I listened to the responses of Exim Bank, Mr. Tang Nain, and the last speaker, I felt for them in the sense that they offer a tremendous public service like we do, Mr. Chairman. And it's not an easy ride, especially in the current economic circumstances in which this nation is put. So in that context, I would like to extend a thank you to these persons because they offer a service to this country at little remuneration, and we must be grateful for that. But they are accountable to us, which is why they're here, and we must proceed on those terms. What's the name of the last speaker? I joined us late. Mr. Dukaran? Yes, Mr. Dukaran in particular. The whole issue, I'm coming now as a representative of Laventille East, MOVA for 12 years, and now Laventille West for 6. I'm coming from the ground. I'm coming from what we are told on the ground, that there's a crisis with Forex in Trinidad and Tobago. People can't get money to send $200 for the child in a university in Miami. People can't get the little medication. All of the little things, that is what we are being told. But I listen to you here today, and I'm getting a totally different picture. And this democratic process that we are now engaged in this live public debate or discussion, interrogation, is designed to inform the public. So I want to ask a question with the public in mind. Between 2015 and 2020, I am told, like the chairman from another place, that some 10 billion US dollars has been made available to the commercial banks. And that is in addition to the roughly 2 billion a year made available to you, Exim Bank, for distribution to persons and businesses in this economy. Is that correct? From your knowledge?
Well, I'm not fully aware of the total 10 billion metric, but I do know that you're right, that typically there's about $400 million of foreign exchange in the system every month. And so when you add that up over time, I could see that 10 billion being realistic. And yes, the Exim Bank has been afforded about 250 million so far.
And is it correct to say that as a consequence of public disquiet and media manifestations, that the function, the mandate, and the amount available for your Exim Bank's distribution was refreshed and improved within recent times. Is that correct?
You are 100% correct, member. At the end of last year, the government reapproved another $100 million for the manufacturing sector for 2021, and they approved a further $50 million for the provision of essential supplies for the first part of this year.
And my next question is bifurcated between you and the Ministry of Finance, who is in this room. Is it correct to say that the focus has been on providing foreign exchange for the manufacturing sector, the essential foods import sector, pharmaceuticals, meaning medicines and so on, and the health sector supplies, in addition to our public utilities like WASA and TNTech, has not been the focus? And I want an answer from you, Exim Bank, and then immediately behind that, the Ministry of Finance. Has it been the focus for these foreign exchange distributions on those elements of this economy?
Yes, what we are attempting to do based on the government programs in place and what was approved by the cabinet is to fuel and direct the foreign exchange to the productive growth sectors of the economy, like the manufacturing sector, and at the same time cover the basic needs. Those are the two areas that we do. So that is what we're doing. Our funds are directed towards the private sector. We do not provide any funds to any of the statutory bodies or any other public bodies like the WASA.
In which case, let me hear the central bank on this matter, please. I want, on behalf of the little people of Trinidad and Tobago, to know the facts. Central Bank, could you tell us in respect of this, where we work, what you do?
Okay, I believe you mean Ministry of Finance, Honorable Member.
Sorry, Ministry of Finance, sorry.
Okay, so as you rightly said, monies by US dollars were provided to the Exim Bank to stimulate the manufacturing sector to earn more foreign exchange, because as you would have indicated, there is an issue with foreign exchange. So the Exim Bank would have done its business to stimulate growth, that is to earn foreign exchange. The Ministry of Finance has an allocation that is provided to certain essential state entities to ensure continuity of services.
Like public utilities and TNTech and so on?
Yes.
Yes. Now let me ask both of you again, what might be for the time being my final outing in this regard. Because the complaints that the public shares with me as a member of parliament, and some of the reportage I see in the newspaper, Ministry of Finance, Exim Bank, is that these products, I mean, the grocery shelves are empty. People can't get basic food. People can't get medication. And from what you are saying here, it doesn't appear that way. So let me ask, from your knowledge, would you say that there are leakages in the system where possibly foreign exchange is hoarded off, taken out of your system, and your focus, your intention for manufacturing and for pharmaceuticals, and along the line, some large amounts get lost by hoarders, and then you hear these noises quite unjustifiably against the background of what Exim Bank and the Ministry of Finance is doing? That's my question. Can I get an answer from each of you, please? I'm asking on the basis of your knowledge and experience from the statistics, from the yield, from the inflow of foreign products and inputs on the grocery shelves, in the pharmacies, in the hospitals. What is your take on this?
Yeah, very insightful.
And don't speak to me, speak to the layman, the little person in the bar out there, that teacher, the young lawyer, the barber. I don't want you talking to me. Talk to the little people of Trinidad and Tobago. This is the opportunity to speak truth to them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, member. You are 100% correct. There's a significant degree of tightness in the foreign exchange market, which makes it very difficult for a number of companies to be able to access the required amount of foreign exchange, for the man on the street to be able to buy enough foreign exchange. Now, we can only control at the Exim Bank our programs and what we do. And what we have implemented in our programs is the requirement for any company, manufacturer that is exporting, for them to continue to ask for an exchange, they must provide proof that they are actually repatriating and bringing back US dollars into the country. However, when the commercial banking sector makes foreign exchange allocations, they do it on other commercial decisions, and they give the US directly to the customer in Trinidad. After that, what the customer does with that is up to them. The difference with the Exim Bank program is that we, in order for you to ask for foreign exchange from us, is we are sending the foreign exchange directly to the international supplier, so we make sure that it goes to where it has to get to. However,
pause a second. Let me come with a subsidiary question. Are you therefore saying to us that the system you have in place is to that extent a more stringent one than the one that might exist in the commercial banks, in the sense that you don't give it to the businessman in his hand, you send it to his supplier?
Yeah.
And you monitor the reciprocal US dollars coming in as a consequence of it?
Come back, yes.
Saying to us that is not exactly, from your knowledge professionally, that is not exactly what happens with the commercial banks.
Correct. At the commercial banks, it is a straight commercial sale transaction, and you buy the US and you get the US.
And not only that, it might also be based on long-term relationships with my bank. If I deal with FCB, I deal with Scotia, and I'm a long-standing customer, I may get a kind of access that a brand new or not so long-standing customer might enjoy, which is what I think you mean by other considerations, including commercial considerations. Am I correct?
It is very possible, member. And in fact, one of the things that we've done in order to expand the market for this foreign exchange and for it to reach the small business is we have expanded the program so that it's not only for large manufacturers that are exporting. We said, even if you are a small manufacturer that have ambitions, you want to aspire to export, you can provide us with an export plan. And based on the export plan, we will be able to provide foreign exchange to you. So that is how we are trying to get it to you.
Thank you. Central Ministry of Finance, my last question. Against the background of what you have just heard, it is quite possible, therefore, and I want your view on this, for the lay people of this country, it is quite possible that I could go to the bank a Friday evening for 300 US and I really cannot get it. So my cry is justifiable, not because the central bank did not make money available to the commercial bank, but because Mr. Mark, big, popular, well-known as he is, and his relationship with the bank, he gets it and I don't. Do you think that might be so, Madam Finance?
Leave all the chairman out of your conversation.
Just by way of metaphor.
No, I'm just saying leave all the chairman, please.
I thank you very much, and I should do that. But let me therefore just briefly restate then. I'm leaving out the chairman. I was looking for someone who might have influence in the society.
Yourself. I would suggest yourself.
No.
I would advocate Mr. Hines.
Mr. Chairman, leave me out, please. Central Bank, could you be kind enough to respond to this? Because we are talking to the little people who hear the media say there's none. And the little you hear, not that you haven't done what you have done. But is that possible?
I think you're talking about the Ministry of Finance, huh?
Yes, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you. Ministry of Finance?
Thanks, Chairman. So the member rightly indicated that central bank is really the one to answer this question. And I am not in a position to respond, to say whether there's evidence of leakages or so. What I can say is that there have been situations and times when and agencies, probably, businesses would have written to Ministry of Finance indicating that they are in dire need, like let's say they are providing pharmaceuticals and they don't have the foreign exchange and so. And we would write to Exim Bank, and ask, to assist in whatever way they can. But obviously, Exim Bank has predetermined criteria that they would have to follow. And they would do their assessments, and if they meet the criteria, would obviously provide the requisite assistance.
So who in this room would be able to tell the public about the possibility of what I call leakages? In other words, money being dispensed through the central bank at the behest of the Ministry of Finance, at the behest of Exim Bank on their program, and still not meeting the targets and the purposes for which the state intended. And let me say this as I close, Mr. Chairman. Around 2016, as a layperson, as a citizen, like many thousands of others, I would have heard some people saying that because of this situation, if there's not a devaluation, our foreign reserves, our HSB would evaporate in 6 months. That neither of those has actually happened. As a matter of fact, the foreign reserves fell, I'm suggesting to the Ministry of Finance, by about $4 billion, nothing close to the collapse that some persons around 2016 and since then have been purporting. So I would really, really like to know, on behalf of the little people of this country, on this question of leakages and the central bank, the Ministry of Finance and Exim Bank, putting in the foreign exchange as considered necessary, and still you have legitimate concerns for the leakage and for the misdirection that I have alluded to. Anyone in the room can venture a response on this? Before I close, and that will be my last question.
Minister Hines, I am with you on that question, but I think it would be unfair to our officials who are not employees of the central bank to properly address that question. But if anyone who is present is willing to assist us in clarifying that, I would welcome their input. So is there anyone from the Ministry of Finance or the Export-Import Bank would like to hazard, And Minister Hines, what we will also do, we will write the central bank as the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee to seek answers to your question as well.
Very warmly, I was thinking exactly that. You see why I love you, Mr. Chairman? We are on the same intellectual frequency.
But I'm also asking my colleagues if anyone in our midst from both the Finance Ministry as well as the Exim Bank would like to respond to your concerns. Is there anyone?
Chairman, I think that is best placed with the central bank. I wouldn't want to hazard any responses at this time.
Not even a gut feeling?
Is there anyone from the Exim Bank would like to hazard a guess, or would you agree?
What I will
Mr.
say,
Dukaran?
yes, what I would say is for our foreign exchange delivery, you have our commitment that we will set up our programs to ensure that that does not occur with our Exim Bank programs.
Well, thank you so very much. But as Minister Hines, I want to give you the assurance that is a matter of grave concern to the population, as you have pointed out, and we will, as a committee, be formally communicating with the central bank so that this committee can have answers to those concerns that have been raised by your good self.
Finally,
Now?
Finally, Mr. Chairman, be kind enough. Finally, I read only in yesterday's paper. Well, at least I read it yesterday. It may have been a paper of a few days before that, that a non-national of Trinidad and Tobago was caught attempting to exit one of our ports, an airport, with a large sum, I think about $150,000 US.
Okay.
Understand that?
Yes.
Understand that?
Yes, while we talk about control of the Forex program and the US dollars given to us by the central bank to distribute to manufacturers and exporters and to grow the GDP and also the foreign exchange earnings within the country, the programs that we have at present, which is the essential programs and the manufacturing program, we have put systems and controls in place to mitigate against those risks. But Exim Bank also grants loans in US dollars. And on that front, when the exporters earn foreign exchange, we really don't have any sort of control over what they do with those earnings, whether they expatriate it or so. All right, so we do have control over what we get from the central bank, but on the other front, that's up to our customers.
May I follow up by asking either your good self, financial controller, or a member from the Exim Bank, is there any data available based on your monitoring of these export non-energy companies? Do you have any data that you'll be able to share with this committee concerning the kind of foreign exchange earnings that these exporters are earning on behalf of the country, even though that money is not being retrieved by the Exim Bank, it is being earned by these companies? Is there any data that you can share with us to say, for instance, from the period of March 2020 to March of 2021, a percentage of the exporters have been able to generate in foreign exchange earnings X millions of dollars, even though it would not have come to the Exim Bank? Is there any data available that you can share with this committee on that generation of foreign exchange earnings?
Yes, Chair. That was some of the metrics that I spoke about with the 600 million moving to the 1.37 billion to the 1.68 billion. That is the export earnings. That data is actually the official source of that data. We get it on an aggregate basis, was the Ministry of Trade. But that is the number. So from the Exim Bank's perspective, we could give you that data based on our client base at an aggregate level.
And you can provide it on a detailed basis, like for instance, how much is coming from the small enterprise sector, how much is coming from the medium enterprise sector, and how much is coming from the large manufacturing sector. So if you can submit that to us in writing, we will appreciate very much.
Yes, Chair, we'll be happy to do that.
Now, I would like, thank you very much, Minister Hines. I would like to ask a few questions before I invite my other colleagues to join us. Mr. Navin Dukaran, you did say that in the national budget statement of 2021, the Exim Bank was asked to do the following: that it be transformed to facilitate the growth and expansion of the non-energy export sector, thereby enhancing our foreign exchange earnings as well as generating employment. Also, the Exim Bank will be restructured to provide project financing for Caribbean energy sector projects by the Trinidad and Tobago companies. With regard to the first initiative, could you advise this committee, or could you state, I should say, the difference from the company's current mandate of, and I want to quote, to vigorously pursue its mission to facilitate the growth and expansion of the non-energy export and manufacturing sectors in order to enhance the foreign exchange earnings of Trinidad and Tobago and to create and sustain employment through trade finance, product portfolio coverage to the exporting community. In other words, I would like to ask, what further transformation is the Exim Bank expected to undertake, given what I have outlined?
Sure, Chair. Very good question. And I will say that, first of all, the whole foreign exchange operations and delivery is a relatively new mandate for the Exim Bank, which commenced in 2018. And so that one is one thing that is also continuing to develop. The other ways that we can address this is by innovative and products that are designed for growth, right? And what has led to some of our success with these programs has been a very collaborative approach with the private sector and the business associations in designing the products that would be helpful for the companies. So one would be loans that are X loans, which are like TT dollar repayments, but US dollar proceeds. These are things that will help support our business sector. As we engage with some of the multilateral agencies, right now we need full collateral in order, we want low risk business and we require full collateral in order for companies to do business with us. That would usually mean that the companies would be of a certain well-established size. But we recognize to do this transformation and to drive national growth, we must have a solution for the SME sector, the small and medium-sized enterprises sector. And that is where some of the discussions with the multilateral agencies are heading. In terms of looking at different things, we are exploring different ideas like credit, a collateral guarantee program that is still exploratory stages. We're looking at a number of different type of product offerings that can help different sectors, especially the SME sector, with collateral support, so that when they go to their own bank and they don't have the required collateral to be able to invest, maybe the Exim Bank through a government program will be able to provide collateral support. So that is just one example of us, how we can increase the different markets that we are able to serve to drive that national growth, as you correctly asking about.
May I also ask Mr. Dukaran whether the Exim Bank has any data on employment generation as a result of the provisioning of very crucial foreign exchange to the export non-energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago, particularly since the arrival of COVID-19 in this country in March of 2020. Do you have like a detailed breakdown of information that would provide some understanding of the level of jobs, employment, sustainable employment that these sectors, whether it is the small, whether it is the medium, whether it is a large manufacturing sector or companies, have been able to generate in terms of sustainable employment? Can you provide us with any data on that?
Chair, this committee, I notice, is zoned in on all our key performance indicators. And that is another one that we have established. which was with the strategic plan that was approved by our board back in November 2019, was employment levels. And we set a target of being able to support companies with employment of over 10,000 employees. I will be very straight to say that we are at the early stages. We've since then started to incorporate collecting that data from our clients. It is on we haven't got to the rigid point of being able to verify it. We just basically ask in our application forms, what is your number of employees? And we are now starting to be able to pull that. So right now, I don't have an ability to say, measure ourselves against the metric yet. It is a metric that we are planning to do. But we do have employment data for our companies on a self-disclosed basis. And we'd be more than happy to share what we have. But I do know that that is an area where we have to continue to improve, because that is a key metric, as you say, to show the efficacy and the effectiveness of our program. So I thank you for that. And we can share what we have at this point.
Now, Mr. Dukaran, we have also been advised, based on the research and the data that is available, that there's an underutilization of capacity in the manufacturing sector. Our data reveal that the manufacturing sector could be operating between 60 and 70% of their capacity. And therefore, with this drive for export and the generation of sustainable employment opportunities, I wanted to know also whether that is an area that is of concern to the Exim Bank in terms of the underutilization of existing capacity at the manufacturing sector level.
Yes, Chair, you're 100% correct. In fact, when you have a company operating at that level, they end up having all this cost, fixed costs associated with equipment and so on, that they are not utilizing well. Some of the most successful companies and countries are the companies that are operating on a 24/7 basis. So they are able to use their assets as productively as possible, and they will become more competitive. At 60 and 70%, that is one of the factors that lead to uncompetitiveness. And so I guess as a first step for the companies or our clients is for them to focus on increasing their sales. And once they be able to increase their sales, and sometimes the sales are not just the local sales, I will say, like, for example, as a company goes outside and looks at markets, the Trinidad market is 1.3 million people, right? If you look at the English-speaking Caribbean, you start to serve that is 8 to 10 million people. That's your market. If you look at the English and Spanish-speaking Caribbean, now you're talking about 30 million plus people. And Latin America, the world, where then it's bigger. We have to serve bigger markets so that we can make the increased sales and productively increase our usage of our fixed assets and become competitive. So, Chair, you're very insightful, and that is definitely an area of improvement for the private sector.
Yeah.
Chairman, if I may add,
Yes.
while we speak to the underutilization of capacity in the manufacturing sector, we must put this in the context of the economic environment at present. We have just gone through a pandemic, and what we are seeing in the economy at present is that markets are down. We service the Caribbean and Latin America as well, and with tourism down, and it's very anemic at this point in time as far as manufacturing sector is concerned. So we have already decided to test the market, and we have aggressively pursued some initiatives. So once that the market starts to turn around, we would want to be first out of the blocks, if I may say it that way, because at present we have energy prices affect us and our capacity, interest rates, our markets. So the economic environment at present, does not augur well for full employment and full utilization of the capacity. So, we are very, much aware of this, and we are testing the environment so that we'll be first out to embrace the opportunities as they come up.
Thank you so very much. But you'll agree with me that with the mass vaccination process that is underway. We have to prepare ourselves as an Exim Bank to really take full advantage of emerging opportunities, particularly, as I said, with the mass vaccination process or inoculation process that is on its way, whether it's in Latin America, North America, etc., etc. So I just wanted to put that on the table. Let me just go on to another point before I invite my colleagues to join us. During our committee's examination of the Exim Bank during the 11th Parliament, the Exim Bank was faced with high staff turnover due to its staff being unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the existing salaries and wages structure at the company at the material time. I would like to ask either your good self or the chairman or the CEO the following questions. Does the Exim Bank still have, as we speak, a high staff turnover problem? That's the first question. Were the company's staff challenges exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, given that in the responses the committee received from the Exim Bank, it was stated that, and I quote, during the lockdown, Forex operations volumes increased by over 300% and remain elevated from pre-pandemic levels. The main challenge experienced was resourcing your teams, which had been working round the clock to ensure the various programs were delivered on time, on budget, and on target. That's the second area I'd like to get clarified. The third area, what resources is Exim Bank lacking? Is it staff shortages or is it a funding shortage? And finally, I would like to indicate that based on the personnel department's response to our committee concern, and I quote, in the final analysis, the chief personnel officer agreed with the salary structures proposed by the Exim Bank, but was not in agreement with the salaries proposed because the comparator data which the consultants utilized were not deemed to be suitable. The CPO is of the view that the Exim Bank's operations are less complex than the comparator organizations used by the consultant Human Resource Solutions Limited. Could you tell us what is the status of this issue? These are some of the areas we'd like to clarify. Either your good self, Financial Controller, or Mr. Dukaran, or Mr. Tanya.
Chair, if I may address each one of those, and then maybe I will have, if the our chair is open to giving an overall statement, but let me go through your specific ones very quickly. And that was a recommendation, let me say, from the Joint Select Committee that we among many others, I must say, all the recommendations provided by the by this committee, PAC committee last time, we actually 100% the management and board agreed very well with, and we thought were very useful and helpful. In the area of staff turnover, I'm pleased to say that that has now been subsided. I think we have good staff morale, and that has now, we have very little staff turnover. So that is one improvement. The staff challenges during the pandemic, if it has increased, it has increased because we have asked more of the same people. And the board has just recently, as of January of this year, authorized us to look at increasing our staff complement, right? In terms of, in order to help alleviate that issue. And so that is one of the area, but in terms of, I must give kudos to the team at the Exim Bank, who I must admit have rallied. And when the pandemic happened, Chair, nobody asked about if we need to work evenings or weekends. We were getting money out for medicines and food, and everybody put in what they needed to do, and they did it, and they continued to do it. So I must admit the team has rallied very well. In terms of the major resources requirements that are at present, some constraints at the Exim Bank. One is staffing and an organizational structure that is able to support the level of operations that we have. We are going to make progress on that with the transformation initiative when we do a whole organizational transformation. But however, until then, it is 35 to 40 people that are doing what we are doing. And as you could hear the numbers and the quantums of the numbers that we're talking about, I'm sure you'd realize that that is stretching a little thin. As again, our board has addressed this and has given us some flexibility in how we move forward. In terms of funding, with the recapitalization that has recently happened from the Ministry of Finance and some of the ongoing discussions with the multilateral agencies, I do not see funding being a problem. In fact, I see funding, one of the key challenges for us in the future is being able to deploy the capital as productively and effectively as possible. Just like what you said the PAC's mandate is, we need to fulfill that mandate at our institution. So funding, I don't see as a problem. I think everything is tracking well on that. Regarding the CPO and their position, it is my sincere hope that once we are able to complete this organizational transformation, and we are able to resource and set up a framework that will be able to deliver this government service in a very efficient manner, which we have been doing, it is my sincere hope that the CPO would be able to agree to at least just pay market rates. That's all. We don't want above market. We would just prefer if we could, get market rates at a fair treatment. And that is where we are regarding that. We haven't had much movement from the CPO, but we are also being judicious. We don't want to try to ask for things or put things piecemeal. That is why we're working on the whole organizational transformation and the funding and everything at the same time, so that there's that full plan, so that if anybody is to look at it, yourself and others can say this was the right thing to do, and it's supported by us having national impact. And so I don't know if my chairman would like to put an overall comment on this issue and your question.
Yeah, but before Mr. Tanyang gets in, you mentioned the recapitalization of the bank, which is, as you said, it has led you to revive somewhat, and you're on your way to some degree of profitability once again. May I ask Mr. Dukaran, what are some of the measures you are taking, and what specific outcomes would you be anticipating as it relates to your impending or imminent approaches to both the World Bank, I think you mentioned, and CAF, or is it the IADB and CAF? And what are you seeking to get out of those two institutions in an effort to strengthen the Exim Bank in Trinidad and Tobago?
Sure. Again, any engagement with those entities is still subject to ministry approval. We're in exploratory stages. But the capital restructuring has allowed us to create what we call our Tier 1 capital base. Financing from these institutions, which would be long-term financing at concessionary levels at rates, will allow us to form what we call our Tier 2 capital base, further strengthening the capital base of the Exim Bank. With those two institutions, one of the, as I said, one of the areas that we are exploring is a program where we'll probably be able to provide collateral support for small business. The other thing is with being able to obtain that financing and that support at the concessionary levels, it is possible that we may be able to pass this on to our private sector and be able to provide very attractive interest rates for them to be able to spur their investment and spur their growth as well. So I think that would be the main transfer over, and how I see that type of funding. Right now, Chair, we access our funding where we borrow from the commercial banks and then relend. But accordingly, our rates are not the best rates because we are already borrowing from the same commercial banks and relending. But by borrowing from these large multilateral agencies, it drops your funding cost, your cost of funds, and it impacts one of our other KPIs, which is our interest rate spread. And once we're able to drop that cost of funds, we'll be able to pass that savings on to the private sector and help spur more national growth. That is our hope.
All right, thank you very much. May I now invite Mrs. Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal to join us at this time. Mrs. Renuka? She might have left us. May I ask?
No, Chair, I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. You're now welcome to join us. Thank you.
Well, you'd appreciate, Chair, I'm batting very low down the order. So, of course, my colleagues would have very much competently addressed concerns that I would have had for this esteemed team that appears before us this morning. So I have... well, as I said before, my colleagues would have addressed most of my concerns. I know earlier on in the game, I would have mentioned the business continuity plan. So I just want to remind the committee, remind the team that is before us to submit that continuity plan for us, that business continuity plan 2020, so that at least we, as a committee as a whole, we could consider that. I would imagine that this particular plan would have dealt with unidentified threats and vulnerabilities, human resource challenges, and perhaps even budget constraints faced by the Exim Bank. If it has not, I would respectfully submit that these are some of the areas that are that we can also be addressed on when this business continuity plan is provided to us. So that is just my respectful request to the Exim Bank. What I want to turn to now, the only thing that's really left for me to ask is relative to operational growth in Guyana. This question, I believe the Ministry of Finance could perhaps address. It is relative, so basically is the Ministry of Finance in a position to indicate to us whether local companies' expansion into Guyana's market, has that at all earned any sort of significant revenue to Trinidad and Tobago's economy?
Yes, Ministry of Finance.
Thanks for the question. I think it is early days as yet.
Right.
And the Ministry of Trade most probably will be collecting that kind of data and doing that analysis. As I said, it does not make sense to just collect data for a short period and, for comparative purposes. And so it would not make sense. So I would imagine we would have to wait for a little longer period. And then when all the data comes in, you have that comparison.
And we could be able to properly measure.
Yes.
I'm seeing Exim Bank.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, from the focus of this committee, I must say, I get the sense that that committee really is looking to help with the resilience of the Exim Bank when you focus on areas like the BCP and these other areas. And I want to point out on that BCP plan, which we will be more than happy to submit. In addition to the BCP plan, because the BCP plan, business continuity plan, covers many different scenarios.
Right.
Fire, pandemic and other different disasters. In addition to that, within 1 week of the pandemic being declared, we had a separate addendum document, which we will also share, that is specific to your pandemic continuity plan.
Right.
We went even deeper into that, and we will more than happy to share. But these are the kind of considerations we really need to do to be able to ensure our sustainability and resilience. And I want to thank you so much for that.
Thank you. I see Member Hines want to interject. Member Hines, feel free to give way.
No. Please, if you continue, I can come after when the chairman.
Oh, no. Okay, so well, as we're on the point of Guyana now, for Exim Bank in particular, from your client listing, has any of your companies attempted to or ventured into penetrating Guyana and the opportunities that are available to them there?
Yes, definitely there are many companies that are looking at Guyana as an area of opportunity. And with our market share, which I would say is above 50 to 60% in the manufacturing side of things, and even higher on the essential items. There are a number of companies that are looking at Guyana. There is a specific opportunity that we are also, I should have said it when Chairman had raised the issue about what other programs. We are, in addition to the other things with the multilateral agencies, is we're looking to build out as offering to help support energy service companies.
Excellent.
We are not there finished with that yet, but it's in the works, and that is an area of great opportunity because our energy service companies have pretty much some of the best and longest experience in the hemisphere.
Correct.
And so we want to build out that to help with the Guyana expansion, export expansion as well.
Beautiful. And Chairman, well, as I said, most of my other concerns would have been already addressed. So that is the extent of my questions for the committee at this stage.
All right, thank you so very much. May I invite Mrs. Laurel Lizama, who has been waiting to join us for a little while now. My apologies, Laura.
That's quite all right. Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to thank all of the members of this committee who have asked really excellent questions. Chairman, your last round of questions really and truly encapsulated the bulk of what I wanted to ask about, because I was very keen to find out about the progress of Exim Bank insofar as its own operational structure and its institutional strengthening, bearing in mind that the Exim Bank is in fact critical to the diversification of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, and to not incentivizing, but rather the growth and the building of the manufacturing sector here in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I note that you would have received bids, I believe, on the 23rd of February, if I'm not mistaken. And I just want to know, of course, you wouldn't have any outcomes from those as yet, but can you just give me a little synopsis as to how that process went, please, and a time frame, for instance, when you would announce who has been selected to assist in the process for the institutional strengthening, and the time frame that you expect that to take place within? That's my first question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, so again, on that transformation initiative, we went through a very rigorous RFP process over the course of the last part of last year. We have received bids. They are being evaluated at this point. Next week, Monday, is a board meeting, one of our scheduled board meetings, where we will be letting the board know more about what we have received and so on. And we will have some discussions, strategic direction. We will be seeking a strategic direction of considerations from our board, at which point we expect that we will possibly shortlist and bring down the list, and then start to develop a little bit more of exactly define what are the exact next steps and next deliverables for the companies. And it is our hope that within Q2 of this year, that we will have engaged a party that will be able to assist us and commence this transformation process in earnest. And my chairman, my esteemed chairman, has set some targets for me where he wants us to complete the organizational transformation in 2021. And so this is where we're working towards that timeline.
Mr. Dugran, can you speak to the software upgrade and our direction to support the customers as far as software and accessing their information? Yes.
Thank you, CFO. That is actually a very a good point to raise. One of the other areas too that we have commenced this year is to upgrade our core banking system and technology systems. You know, just like any other operational thing, when you're growing, one of the things there's a lot of things on Excel, and people are, having to do things a lot very manually. By upgrading our technology system, it will allow us to be able to add new products onto our platform, which right now is a little bit of a challenge for us because we have to do a lot of workarounds to be able to implement that. And also, it will enable the easy transfer of data, what you call via APIs or the interfaces, so that we can set up client-facing portals so clients can get transparency in terms of where their facilities at, how much room they have on it, and also track application status and so on. So there's a lot to go, but we have commenced it. Our board again approved that in the beginning in January. We commenced it, and again, that is another initiative that will be running in parallel with the organizational transformation. As you know, you have to do these things together because the technology and the process and the people structure all intertwine. So
thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to ask, because given the current circumstances, we've now had a heightened awareness for creating digital ecosystems that will be beneficial to your organization. And so I'm very happy. Thank you, CFO, for raising that, because I was going to go along those lines to ask him afterwards if everything would have been parallel and in tandem. And so that goes therefore with, I noted as well that you've spoken to the fact that Exim Bank would be looking towards digital content, but I've not supporting people with digital content, which is a new emerging and existing and emerging industry in Trinidad. And I just wanted to get some information, a little feedback on that, please, because I wasn't very clear on how you plan to give that support and in what context and what framework you have set up for that. Thank you.
Let me just say, we don't know yet. Yeah, that is a nascent, very early stage idea. We would have to go through a lot of rigorous analysis and so on. Typically, that is not commercially viable, bankable type of engagements. And again, right now, in order to ensure the bank sustainability, we need to bank commercially viable business. But it is something that I see as a significant comparative advantage in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso and all our things. And if there's a model, but we will have to go out to the market and engage collaborative with many experts and so on. And again, depending on the government's alluded to the whole concept of what you call blended finance, which is finance that is not necessarily specifically commercially viable, but has a social impact. And so we are just trying to see how we will be able to achieve that, but remain profitable. So, but we at this point, short answer is I don't know yet.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Fair enough. But I do think that now is a great opportunity for us to look at that, because we talked about the gained and lost opportunities at Carnival. I'm talking about our culture and our own things that are indigenous to us. And it would be interesting to see whatever outcomes you have from that. So I look forward to seeing that from the Exim Bank. And my final question, Chairman, is really the, sorry, I'm just pulling up my document here. The madeintnt.com. Can I just get some insight into that, please? Because I know that, I think it was maybe, I might be wrong, my terminology may be wrong, but it was a hit and miss the first time around, maybe? I don't know, but if you can please give me some insight into that, because I think that's critical as well, given the era that we exist in right now.
Yes.
Thank you.
So that Made in TNT was launched back in 2014, in November 2014. It initially enrolled about 21 clients with about 150 products listed on basically it was a website, kind of like Amazon, but for Trinidad, right? And we had a number of different sectors and so on represented there. It got some traffic and so on. The key learning of a number of different learnings, which we got out of that, was that nobody, I'm going to use an example, nobody in Sweden gets up in the morning and says, I want to buy something from Trinidad and Tobago. Let me find what is made in TNT, right? All our products have to have a proper value proposition for the end consumer, which would be the global consumer. And one of the things that we are trying, we're learning and we're trying to refashion this time is we are trying to see, instead of creating they may still have a central repository, which is a local website, but to drive traffic to that website will cost a lot of money and capital. So instead of placing the products on this one website that the world has to come to, the concept is that we want to place the products, the Trinidadian products, on the international platforms like the Amazons, the Alibabas, and where the international consumers are already at. However, having said that, the companies and their products have to be able to be competitive and have the quality that would be able to have consumer demand in the world, right? So that is the direction we are trying to go. The other channel, or the other, and what we call it's electronic channel strategy, is that we are trying, from our research that we engage with our IDB funded program and so on, we continue to have the international consultants working with us on it. One of the key areas for the small business is they need not just training and so on and support, they need like a back office. Like the big companies have their finance department, HR department, procurement department. These small businesses need some sort of service to be able to have a back office to handle all that type of stuff. So the entrepreneurs could focus on either manufacturing or doing what they're good at. It is going to be a challenge, but we are going to try to create something like what you call a virtual business in a box, using some of the already web-based platforms. Again, anything in software development is what we call, is high risk. It is research and development. But we do believe, and we have received funding from the ministry to try to further this initiative. And I do believe if we can get this to work, we will be able to enable and energize, again, that small business segment of our population and take them from thinking about just selling in Trinidad to being able to sell to the world.
Mr. Chairman?
Before you speak, Mr. Hines, I think the member Dean Wright would like to say a few words, and then I'll come to you. May I invite Member Dean Wright?
Thank you, Chair. Member Hines, I wouldn't be too long. I will try not to be too long. So all this talk about comparative advantage and trying to drive the national growth in the non-energy sector. I see in your submission that you all would have indicated that the target of $3 billion in new exports is what you all seem to be, together with Ministry of Trade, what you all deem achievable in the medium term, right? So could you tell me from the Exim Bank side, because I know you all are part of this whole drive towards the diversification agenda. From Exim Bank side, how much of this $3 billion do you all intend to contribute to generating?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are already supporting 1.68 billion of export sales, right? Given our market share and target market share, I would say we would like to at least be servicing 75% of the market at the least. which would mean, and again, the actual export sales are driven by the private sector companies. So if we service at least 75%, because there's a segment of our private sector companies that do not need the Exim Bank and do not need foreign exchange and so on, because they are net Forex earners.
Right.
Right? We will continue to operate without our involvement. Right? And in fact, that is a route where we want all our clients to go. I always say this to many people. I said there's a vaccine for the COVID-19. The economic vaccine for business is for you to increase your exports and your own foreign exchange earnings. That way you're not at the mercy of the national system. And, and our hope is that we would contribute at least 75% of the market to that.
So then you're more than satisfied that this $3 billion target of increasing export earnings is more than achievable in the medium term?
What I would say, it requires a lot of hard work from a lot of different stakeholders, including the private sector.
Now, a lot of talk went on about comparative advantage. And my question is, how much are you all working with Ministry of Trade and Export TT, and to what extent the trade policy established by the Ministry of Trade, which highlights all the areas of comparative advantage, to what extent are you all utilizing this policy in your work and servicing clients?
Yeah, very good question. I would say that we have been, especially with the data sharing and so on, collaborating with the Ministry of Trade, where that has helped us improve the ease of doing business with our clients. Before, we used to ask them for binders of export orders with CARICOM invoices and so on. Now they just have to give us the top line and we actually verify after the fact. And so we've been able to make improvements on the ease of doing business. We've also been able to help us with our allocations on foreign exchange to ensure that they're fair, because we know what people have been in the high level numbers of what they've been importing and so on. So those are some areas that we've been working with the Ministry of Trade. The Ministry of Trade has put out, based on that new trade policy, an action item plan. And that action item plan has been shared with with all stakeholders in the public sector. And there are 4 or 5 specific action points for the Exim Bank. And I would say our current strategies are aligned with that. There's a lot of work still to be done. And so we will continue to move forward. But I would still say, though, that there's room for even greater collaboration.
Right. But it would be interesting if you could submit those 5 points in writing, if it's too much for you to mention now. But no, you said that you all have been able to facilitate the ease of doing business. And I would like to get an example of that. And also back to the talk about comparative advantage. And I saw here in your submission, you said in the small business sector, there are other known national comparative advantages in cocoa, pepper, and agro-processing. Could you give us an example in which you all are your intervention in these areas?
Yes, we, I forgot your first point. I could talk about the cocoa and pepper, but you wanted to know something else before that?
Yeah, I forgot as well.
All right, right ahead.
She wants to get the 5 points you spoke about and the comparative advantage.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. We will share that because it is in the Ministry of Trade Action Item Plan. But on the cocoa, pepper, and agro processing, the Exim Bank has already provided financing for a number of cocoa-related businesses. We also have provided financing for a company that is, the companies that are making like different condiments and so on, and that have actually been successful in exporting. The cocoa business is a little bit of a challenge, because what is required there in order to get cocoa estates up and running is long-term financing without debt repayment obligations. They need equity injection and long-term capital. At this point, that is not something that we currently offer. And we are seeing challenges in order to get the companies to scale up and so on. But we are committed to continue to work with these companies because they are comparative advantages. And as we continue to develop our programs, like the creative sector area, which is one of those Ministry of Trade action items, is we need to figure it out. But at this time, it is not commercially bankable, viable business.
Right.
And so we have to find out what are the financial solutions for those type of entities.
Okay.
And it may be Exim Bank, or it may be another kind of entity that will address that. But for now, we are trying to see what we could do. But it is opportunity, but it's high risk.
Okay. I just want to go quickly to the financial statements that you all would have submitted for 2015, 16, and 17. I saw that you all moved in the profit and loss statement from a profit of 2.92 million. Am I correct? In 2015?
Yes, in 2015, correct.
It went to $405,000 in 2016, and then it jumped to a significant loss of $6.5 million in 2017. Could you, just for the benefit of not having the updated audited financial statements, could you inform us how this figure has evolved since then?
Okay, I would speak to that right now. Now, first of all, we have the audited financial statements. All these have been laid in Parliament except 18, 19, and soon 20. All right, for the year 2016, we had a contraction in the manufacturing sector. Hand and glove with this, we have to look at other macroeconomic indicators. Interest rates were increasing. Also, we had an accrual which we started in the year 2015 for back pay to all staff. We started in 2015 to accrue 5%, and in 2016 we continued to accrue 2% more of back pay for the years 2012 to 2016. That was like $624,000 in accruals. Also, we were not able to lend as we had planned, so therefore our net earnings was very small. I must mention, as you all are very much aware, that $6.55 million in interest income was not, added to our bottom line because, of a certain situation that we had existed from August 2016. All right. So not 6.55. I want to correct that. For August to December 2016, that interest income loss was 2.421, and we also took a provision of 6.55 million. So those were the contributing factors to the reduced net profit after tax. All right, I want to just underscore that. We saw a contraction in the manufacturing sector, loss of interest income of $2.42 million, increased accrual of back pay of $0.624 million. Then let's go on to 2017. 2017, again, we had loss of income of 5.846, and we also started to take provisions of $10.9 million in the year 2017. So those were the contributing factors to the reduction in income for the period under review.
Okay, and in terms of the interest income, I saw that in 2016 there was a 23 million loss, and then in 2017 a 9.2 million loss. Could you just provide explanations for those?
Repeat that.
Interest income, there was a loss of 23 million in 2016 and then 9.2 million in 2017.
Right, that is 2.3 million and not 23. I think you have 2.3 and not 23. Okay.
And
Yeah.
where
It's
did
not
that
a
come?
loss. It's not a loss, but we did, based on what exists, that was out of the ordinary. I don't know if Mr. Dukaran wants to clarify here. On that.
What I would also add to it, just to give the committee sightlines for information that will be coming to you as once all the financial statements are published, is to give you some sidelines into 2018 and 2019 as well. What you would see, because of the strategic decision to increase provisions, as I mentioned, what I call a balance sheet cleanup exercise, and to really cater for all these legacy issues and so on, the loss would have increased in 2018 and 2019, right? And that was in order for us to cover and clean up all legacy items. That process has now relatively been completed. And so now in 2020, as you move forward, again, we are tracking as the audit is completed, possibly to profit in the realm of about 10 million plus or minus, depending on where your final adjustments are made. So we've been able to turn the corner. Sometimes you need to make the tough decisions in terms of to take the hits and take the capital, and now we've done the capital restructuring. But that is how the track is, and the track, that was because of going through this whole balance sheet cleanup exercise and increasing provisions over 2018 and 2019.
Yeah, in addition to that, I want to add the cleanup exercise was also forced on us by an accounting standard called IFRS 9. So now we have no sort of subjectivity because a model has been imposed on all financial institutions. So we have to look at the probability of default, recovery rate, collateralization, and things like these. And this now guides us as to what our expected credit loss must be, which is our loan loss provision. So the construct of Exim Bank in the past has been one, and still continues to be one, of developmental in nature. But here we are adjudged, or we have to operate by IFRSs that are for profit enterprises, and the different type of capital or borrowings, and that would allow us to have better spreads so that we could pass that on to the consumers. All right. So Exim Bank has now focused on taking more security against loans. But again, the meat of the matter now, or the heart of the issue here, is to get funding that would help us to support the entrepreneurs, the emerging ones, as well as the big ones, so that we could earn the Forex for the country. All right. So we may say, probably more equity injection by government, so that will be a zero cost of borrowings. So these are the issues at the heart of the viability of the Exim Bank and economic growth for Trinidad and Tobago. And I really want to speak to that, because this is where the rubber meets the road for Exim Bank and for GDP and economic growth and development.
And I guess this is where you all sought the help of the IDB and CAF. Now, I understand that you all are seeking help, technical assistance from them with the hope of receiving some sort of long-term financing, so that you could very well fulfill that objective of the small and medium enterprises in terms of their productivity and in their ability to generate export earnings. But in terms of this mix of new product developments that you all are considering, could you give an undertaking as to what extent of these products would be categorized as short-term products, short-term financing products, and medium-term financing products? I know you alluded to capital equipment financing for some companies, collateralized guarantee programs, but is there anything else? And could you define them in terms of short-term financing and medium-term financing, just for probably these small and medium enterprises who probably might be listening?
Yes. Our trade finance offerings are what you call working capital financing. So that is a short-term financing, and for people who are not that much into the financial thing, that is kind of like your overdraft in a way, right? And that is short-term financing. But anything to do with equipment financing, or if you have to buy machinery, you normally like to match the financing to the life of the machinery. So if it's something that will last 5 years, you try to take a loan for 5 years. So that would be the mix. Have a capital, short-term financing things, but I think a lot of what is required for investment in growth, long-term investment in growth, is that long-term financing. At this point, I can't give you a projection in terms of how much may be the long-term or not. What I could tell you though, however, is already for this year, you know, we were talking earlier, I think Chairman talked about as the pandemic, as the vaccine rolls out, we are already seeing, we have a significant pipeline for this, what we call the X loan product, which is the capital investment product. A very significant and strong pipeline. A lot of companies are already investing. These are a little bit of the larger companies, but they're already investing in advance of an global economic recovery. So we see that long-term financing playing a major role and probably being a significant share of our lending portfolio.
Okay. One final question, Mr. Chair, if you allow me. Now, I know you all alluded to in your submission to a technical piece or that is being done with the EU on market demand testing, a market demand testing study. And you all indicated that of the 4 parts, the first 2 parts have already been completed. So the second part deals with what offerings would be relevant to Trinidad and Tobago. Could you enlighten this committee on the findings of that study?
Yes, that study has been completed in full, right? And will be shared with our board on Monday and so on. So I don't want to go into specifics until my board has been able to review. But what I would give you one item, which is that whole collateral enhancement program is also included in that study and has been assessed in some way.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I would pause.
All right, Minister Hines, you have the floor.
Thank you very, very, very much. Wow. Thank you very much. I want to, Mr. Chairman, I see a smile on your face. Is it because you heard the member before me say she would not be long? Anyway, I want to take where Member Lizama Leasing took off. And she raised the question of the business portal, context of the government's agenda, digitization and digitalization. And you, Mr. Dukaran, identified the version 1 of that made in TNT electronic platform. This committee is a very experienced one, particularly our chairman. And we know that there has been some loss of value, money, not only because of out and out corruption, but sometimes when bad decisions are made. And it costs the taxpayers in one way directly or sometimes indirectly a large amount of their resources. This version 1, very ambitious, and you told us a while ago that it did not redound to the benefit of the company, nor Trinidad and Tobago, because it was ill thought out. You didn't say that, but I gathered that from all that you have said and from your written submissions to us. This was the 2014 approach to this. We noticed that the website development would have cost $431,000, staffing $648,000, marketing $720,000, 24-hour online support $522,000, materials and services $72,000, external services blogger $152,000, a consultant $46,000, and portal administrator salaries $470,000. altogether totaling $3.68 million. And you told us a while ago that it did not yield benefit. It did not encourage the Swedish, to use your example, the Swedish businessman to say, let me go and see what Trinidad and Tobago has to offer on its website, made in TT&T version 1, so to speak, and therefore it failed. 2 questions. Have you been able to salvage anything of that 2014 adventure? Have you been able to salvage a significant improvement on that which I have just described is only expected to cost $172,000? Now, you exude a lot of confidence, I must say, as CEO and as representative of Exim Bank. We have had people before us who did not exude that level of confidence. And I want to ask, what about this new version that is so substantially less costly? What do you say to give us the confidence that this one will do the business for Trinidad and Tobago rather than that slumbering, stultifying approach that cost $3.6 million in the 2014 version 1 approach? Could you help us, please?
Yes. So to address that, I think you have summed it up relatively well, right? In terms of, I think I would agree with many of your statements there. The only one that I would just clarify is that the 172 on the new version is expenses to date. So it's not that it will cost that, there's probably future expenses. And again, while I exude that confidence, honorable member, I hope and I wish, I cannot guarantee, right? But we are trying our best to see how this could have a tangible, meaningful, positive national impact for our country, and we're going to spend all our efforts to make sure that happens. What I would say on the previous one and so on, and I know this is a committee that you have to account, and rightfully so. However, I have spent many years in education and in other areas and abroad in different roles and so on. And one of the common concepts in innovation is that failure is part of the process, right? If people or groups are penalized for failure, then you will end up with a society and a group that will not take risk and not try to innovate and therefore remain stagnant. I understand what you're saying 100% regarding the version 1, and you know, I would say decisions that were made at that time were based on the best information that people had at that time, right? And I don't want to second guess and say, you know, somebody made a wrong decision or a right one. You know, as we chart the way forward in the future, it is about taking risk, and we have to be able to try to take measured and risk that is mitigated. This is what we have to do now, right? And we are going to try our best. I wish I could tell you 100% this thing is going to work. You know, our board, I'll tell you straight, our chairman is on the call. Our board is not pleased and on this initiative, and to some extent said, let's focus on our core business, right? This is a side thing that has great potential for the country, but it is a very high risk endeavor. And so I would say that, you know, it is part of the process that we have to continue to try and learn. The key is you don't make the same mistake twice, right? If you make the same mistake twice, well, then it's best you don't go home. You know, you have to learn from your mistakes. We've distilled a significant amount of learnings that from that experience that we are taking into.
I will just conclude to say, when things are obvious, words are not necessary. But I'll continue to say, while I accept your thesis that one cannot be shy of risks, otherwise there'll be no progress, I'll say this. we have made some very costly mistakes in this platform from time to time. I'm not talking about the Exim Bank. And I'm saying to you, I'm mindful that within recent times, we have been providing citizens of this country with houses valued at just about $100,000. So $3.6 million would have provided houses for many of the people who knock on the HTC's doors on a daily basis. So while I agree with your thesis, we have to stay very far from recklessness and or careless and costly mistakes. You exude a measure of confidence, and therefore we feel that confidence, and we look forward to a better application of the resources with the nobility of purpose that you have described, and the value of this, as Laura Lizama told us, Member Lizama, for the platform in terms of advancing Trinidad and Tobago's interests internationally in the context of trade. So we thank you very much, but bear in mind, we are concerned about costly errors and mistakes for the taxpayer.
I hear you, member. I acknowledge it, and it's going to sink deep in my head.
May I thank you warmly. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. May I, on behalf of our committee, bring these proceedings to a close, but before I do so, this hearing rather, may I invite Mr. Dukaran and Mr. Tanyang and our comptroller, financial comptroller, to consider submitting in writing to this committee your recommendations for strengthening this very important institution known as the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, so that we can submit for the Parliament's consideration very solid recommendations for advancing and strengthening the overall outlook and operations of this institution. So I would like Mr. Dukaran and Mr. Tanyang to consider our recommendation and submission for us to at least receive in writing your suggestions for strengthening this very important institution. Okay? Mr. Dukaran?
Yes, will do, Chairman. I think it's an excellent idea, and we see the significant value from engaging with this committee. We've seen it in the past, and we continue to see it today. So we would definitely follow your instruction and continue this engagement as you instruct.
Okay, thank you so very much. On behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, may I extend our thanks to you, Mr. Dukaran, to your financial controller, to Mr. Tanyang, John Tanyang, for being here with us. I also want to extend our thanks to Mrs. Lachman, acting Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance, and her team for being here with us. And we again look forward to engaging this very important institution and organization in the future. So we look forward to you submitting your final suggestions. If there are any matters that we need clarification on, we will submit it in writing, and we look forward to at least this very important institution playing a very key role in not only diversifying our economic base, but most importantly, generating what is the lifeblood of this economy, foreign exchange earnings for our society and economy, and of course, the promotion of sustainable employment opportunities for our citizenry at large. So thank you so very much for being with us, for the last few hours. And we look forward and so on to joining us in the not too distant future. So thank you so very much. This meeting is now suspended to facilitate our colleagues' departure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and to all members.